All right, so welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people joining over the next 5 minutes, but we've got a lot of content to go through today. So welcome everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend part of your lunch hour with us. So my name is Kevin Laut. I am the Director of Construction Management for the California State University, and I'm joined by Jeremy Golmajak, who is one of our system-wide construction managers. And I will introduce Dave here in a few moments as well, who you also see on the screen. So we set up this industry program today to spread awareness of our lean planning specification that was introduced, I think, a little over a year ago. So as usual, CSU promotes collaborative, innovative, and lean practices. So it only made sense to start taking the steps to implement lean practices into our construction documents. So we decided to start with planning, since planning and scheduling are the cornerstones of successful projects. And more specifically, we created a Division I specification named the Collaborative Construction Planning Process, which you probably see as one of those poll questions. So the goal is that all our projects moving forward will have awareness that the specification exists in the Division I. People understand how to utilize it, and that all our projects moving forward will embrace it. So before we jump in, I'm going to go ahead and show everybody where to find the specification on our new website. And then I'll also drop a link in the chat box so you guys can find it as well. All right, so for those of you who had not been to our new website yet, this is the new landing page, which I will drop both this link and the direct link to the specifications in the chat box here in a few moments. But down here, we've got a section called the Hub. And all the way at the bottom of the Hub, we have our references, which include our Division I specifications. So here's our Division I general requirements. And then right here is our collaborative construction planning process, which is structured like a standard specification, except we've got some good diagrams and other charts, which we'll also show in this presentation. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on the poll. So you probably were welcomed by a poll on your screen. So if you can take a few moments and answer some of those questions, that'll give us an idea of kind of where everybody is on familiarity with pole planning and the last planner system, as well as people that are familiar with our specification. And then with that, I'd like to turn it over to the person who supported CSU in this initiative, Dave Umstadt. He spent a majority of his career as a construction owner, and over the last 7+ years, he served as a lecturer at our SDSU campus down in San Diego, and runs his own consulting company that supports industry development, training, and innovation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave to talk a little bit more about the specifics of this program.
Super. Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jeremy. And thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to share the results of the poll for those that were able to vote, so you can actually see this. So out of those that did respond to question 1, have you ever used a last planner system or pole planning on a project? So 70% said yes. That's fantastic. For those that are experienced lean practitioners, if you have some constructive feedback on how to make this better as we go along, please put it in the chat or the Q&A box. Either one works well. Question 2 is not a trick question. This is really a question on, do people truly understand how the last planner system is put together? And the correct answer is 5, with 41% nailing that on the head. And we'll talk through that as part of the presentation later today. And then the last question is really about awareness, and that, have you actually read the collaborative construction planning process spec? And that's an 80-20 split, with only 20% saying yes. So thank you for participating. This also helps me kind of guide my commentary as we move along. Okay. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. So some of you may recognize the guy in the middle. That's not me. That's Dan Fauché, a very close friend of ours. But this is actually a milestone plan at Amgen there in Thousand Oaks. Okay. So love this cartoon, sink or swim together. So when we're in a collaborative project, we're all in it together. And if the electrical contractor has a problem on the project, absolutely everybody is going to have a problem on the project by the time it's all said and done. So hopefully you haven't been on a project where you see people like this in the bow, taking big smiles and glee that those that are working so hard in the stern to try and keep everybody afloat. But the big question is, why would you consider using Last Planner? For those of you that have already used it, you have a good sense of why. But this comes from a Dodge Data and Analytics study that was done back in 2016 and partially funded by the Lean Construction Institute. But they went out to 81 owners and they asked them, tell us about the characteristics of the best project that you've ever had, and tell us about the characteristics of typical projects. And what they found is that on the best projects, they tended to have higher lean intensity. And when they had higher lean intensity, which means they used Last Planner system on at least half of the projects, that they were 3 times as likely to complete ahead of schedule and 2 times as likely to complete under budget. So pretty significant reasons to consider using Last Planner. Okay. Now, can everyone see that? Is that good? All right. Perfect. All right. So apologies for technical difficulties. But one of the other things I wanted to share is from the same study. This is what they found is that on the schedule basis, 24% of the best projects finished ahead of schedule. And this is even more important is that 61% of typical projects finished behind schedule. And I would tell you that when I was a public owner, I would have been happy to have 61% of my projects behind schedule. We did a quick study and we found that only 12% of our projects finished on time, defined as the date they were supposed to be done, the day the contract was signed. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, but just symptomatic of some of the challenges that we have as an organization in that industry. So more information from that study, and then we'll jump into some of the Last Planner elements. But in this, what they're showing is the blue line on top here is the best projects. And the orange, you see there's a nice tail that comes out here and a lot more projects behind schedule, as we just saw. But what's probably most telling is that the no variance here, a lot more stability and predictability on the best projects using Last Planner. So another reason to think about why we would use Last Planner. But as we just shared, traditional planning systems aren't working very well. They're not getting us predictable workflows. And if we don't have predictable workflows, that impacts our ability for both speed and cost of the project, our efficiency, our productivity. And the last one is very important, particularly those that may be CPM accolades here or acolytes on the webinar today. But all plans and forecasts, the longer it is, the more wrong it is, the more detailed it is, the more wrong it is. So we routinely see projects where they'll have 2,000 or 10,000 activities with extremely finite level of detail. For instance, on August 13th of 2022, we're going to be doing finished electrical trim out in rooms 901, 902, and 903. The likelihood of that happening is, infinitesimally small. And so why do we plan that level of detail too far in advance? Well, we shouldn't. And so there's an appropriate way to do that. And that's what Last Planner really helps us do. So looking through here, you can see that there are a lot of things that Last Planner can bring as benefits, both in construction and in design. We're really focusing on construction today, but the power is in the conversations that happen at the wall or in the virtual wall, as the case may be, if you're doing this virtually in the COVID-19 environment. But that collaboration is key to the success of the project. And what we have found, someone asked me the other day, well, what about these virtual platforms? And I said, well, virtual platforms are great for a COVID-19 environment. They're great for scaling large projects where you have multiple work streams, but you can't lose the conversations that need to happen at the wall. Otherwise, things don't go the way they should. So Last Planner is all about handoffs. Hopefully we don't have any New York Giants fans here on the call, but If you miss the handoff, you end up with a fumble, and depending on who they're playing here, maybe they lose the ball, maybe they don't. But kind of bottom line is things didn't go as they planned. And so Last Planner is really about helping us better define those handoffs and reduce fumbles. So to the question in the poll, there are 5 connected conversations or 5 elements to the Last Planner system, starting with milestone planning. And I'm going to give you some examples of each of these as we go forward. There's what's called a phase poll or pool planning. You'll hear a lot of people talk about pool planning, but they may have only experienced a phase poll, or they may have only experienced the 6-week make work ready planning. So those are both elements of the Last Planner system. The other 2 being weekly work planning. And then what a lot of people forget is the learning and improving. So how do we end up getting better as we move through the project? Nothing worse than having Groundhog Day 6 months into the project for the same issues that have been bugging the project all along. Okay, so how does this look? Milestone Plan will inform the phase poll. So this is actually a team up in the Central Valley doing a phase poll, trying to get to completion of the project. Multiple work streams. They have various swim lanes tied to all of this, but this is probably 3 months worth of work that they're planning on the wall. This in turn informs a 6-week make work ready plan. And notice that I'm using the term make work ready as opposed to the term look ahead planning. A lot of people will use the term look ahead, but the thing is, if you're just looking ahead, doesn't mean you're necessarily making the work ready. So the idea with going from a 2 or 3 or 4 week look ahead to a 6-week make work ready really allows you to do a couple things. So 1, it kind of gets you a little further out on the horizon. And 2, it allows you the opportunity to start clearing constraints and other issues which are going to stop you if you're not doing it. Then weekly work planning. So what's our plan for the week? And then really monitoring how we're doing relative to that plan so that we have some metrics. And daily huddles. And I was sharing with Jeremy and Kevin yesterday that there are a couple of common denominators from all successful projects that we go to. And we've touched $8 billion worth of projects in the last 7.5 years. Teams that use daily huddles in construction are successful. It's a common denominator on all the successful projects we've seen. Okay, so for those of you that are new to Last Planner, who is the Last Planner? And a lot of times you think about who's the first planner. That's who has, there's a need for the project. They're really trying to define what the need is and the programming and so on and so forth. But the last planners are those that are closest to the actual implementation of the work in construction. And so in this case, they are really the superintendents and or foremen that are making assignments of their individual crews. Okay. And they have to be able to make a reliable commitment on behalf of their organization. So if they can't do that, then they're not the right person to be having in the meeting. Okay. So let's talk about milestone planning. So this is kind of at the top level. And the idea behind this is really to define an overall flow of the project and gain alignment. Okay. Typically, when we go and work with teams, what we will find is that there are multiple schedules. Every trade, everyone that has a contract basically will have their own idea how they plan to do the work. And there may be some huge disconnects on how that flow is going to be, whether it's north to south, whether I have the whole floor at a time or part of the floor, whether I'm working on a particular elevation and counterclockwise or clockwise. But the idea is you take those 7 different schedules or however many they are, and you have a common view and understanding of how everyone is going to do their work. And then as part of that, there are important milestones, not only for the project, but these are really kind of drive it. So we're looking at our milestones here. These are pretty typical important things, whether it be weathered in, it could be out of the ground, it could be topped off, and various types of things. Okay, and this in turn informs our phase poll. Okay, so what does this look like? So this is actually a team at Kaiser Permanente. You can use Last Planner for things other than just construction. In this case, this is a very complex information technology project. They've got 6 separate swim lanes, lots of moving parts. But what they were trying to do is, and with this particular milestone plan, was what are all the major milestones that we have to hit for all of the stakeholders that were involved in this IT migration project in order to make this a success. Okay. Phase poll. So in a phase poll, we're really taking one of those milestones and maybe 3 to 4 months out and defining what are all the activities that are necessary in order to get to that milestone. What's the sequence? What are the durations of those activities? Who goes when? And where are those handoffs? Okay. And that in turn forms your 6-week make work ready plan. What's important to recognize here is notice it says typically 3 to 4 months. We see people try and do this for longer periods of time. And typically what happens is that the plan becomes less reliable because the longer and further out you plan, the less reliable it becomes. Okay. So what do the stickies look like? Okay, so these are pre-printed tags. We see lots of organizations have their own, but this is a particular tag that we see a lot of use with. But what it does is it allows you to define the activity, and an activity is defined as one crew doing one thing in one place. There's a location here on the tag for where you're going to be working physically. What's the crew size? Okay. Tend to ask, so what are we doing here? The activities we're going to be providing under slab services between grids lines 21 and 25. The predecessor is, what do I need before I can actually do my work? And in this case, they need to have a reinforcing steel. This number here is the tag number for that. There's a tag ID, and I wouldn't get too wrapped up in this, but the idea is that we see some teams use tag numbers, some don't. We like to use them because it really makes certain that people identify clearly the handoffs either from their own work or from other trades. But this is really nothing more than a license plate number. Okay. And then the duration, this is typically days, and sometimes it could be hours if you're trying to use this for a shutdown or something along those lines where you had a very short duration. One thing to note on this is sometimes trades may want to go long periods of time. What happens is if you go beyond, we like to say 10 days duration, 10 days is kind of the maximum. Anything that's longer than a 10-day duration can be broken into smaller chunks of work. So electricians, if we got any electricians or electrical contractors on the call, I apologize in advance, but electrical contractors and the foreman a lot of times want to try and go with longer durations because of the way that they're thinking how they're going to do their work. But they can break that down into geographic areas, or whether they're doing their main runs, and the secondary runs, and then pulling wire and terminating. There are different ways to break their scope of work down. Okay, so how does this look on tags? So we're going to start here on the right. So what's our activity? We're going to backfill the underground piping in zone 1. And what's necessary in order for that to happen? Well, we have to have the underground piping. Okay, it needs to be laid, right, or set. Okay. So the tag just before that is underground piping in zone 1. Different crew, notice. So this is Mike's crew, this is Dave's crew. What needs to happen before Mike can do that and his team? Well, the vaults have to be backfilled. Okay, so that's this tag here. What has to happen before the vaults are backfilled? Well, they have to be set. Okay, so we need a tag for that. And then what needs to happen before that? They have to be on site. And you can just continue to work your way backwards. But think about this as a reverse planning. Think about if you have to drop your kids off at school and get to school on time, or if you have to catch a flight on an airport. We use this type of planning all the time. Now we're just using it in a construction context. So here's an example. This is a Turner special project, but they're really kind of starting with the end in mind and working their way backwards. And this is a good strategy. You can see here that each of this is obviously pre-COVID times because no one's wearing masks and not socially distancing, obviously, but they're working their way back to the present. And once they get to the present, then typically the superintendent will do what's called a forward pass to make certain that everything makes sense. This works very well in a situation where you have a relatively straightforward stream of work. If you have a very complex stream of work, or there are multiple streams of work, it sometimes is best to develop some alternative strategies. I'll be glad to talk about that later if you want, but I just wanted to make that point because a lot of people think that you always have to start with the end in mind and work your way to the front. And there are other strategies that use Last Planner that are equally successful. The other point to make on this is as she goes through this, she needs to make certain that the durations of the activities don't total more than the available time to meet that milestone. You see a lot of teams forget to do that. And what happens is that if you've got 90 days worth of activities on the tags and you only have 60 days to do the work, then you truly do need to do a poll and say, okay, how do we pull all these activities back 30 days by doing them concurrently, adding crews, modifying the durations to something that is more realistic, and asking the question is, what would it take to do that? So that ends up being part of the beauty of it. Okay, so I said that there were two common denominators for successful projects. One was the daily huddle. Two is the constraint log and managing constraints in a very effective way. So this should be visual. You can track it in a spreadsheet, but we recommend that you actually track this visually at the job site trailer or whatever big room space you're using. And if you're doing this virtually, make certain that you address it. But the idea is this: a constraint is something that will stop you dead in your tracks if you don't get it removed, and it's typically outside of the immediate control of the team. So think things like permits, or in the case of a lot of CSU projects, state fire marshal. If you've got a project where you've got a long lead piece of equipment, maybe a chiller, maybe it's some type of specialized panel system that's coming from Europe. Those types of things happen. Maybe you're waiting for an answer for an RFI or approval of a submittal on a particular project. So those are all things that should be tracked here in the constraint log, and description of what it is, when you need it, so that it doesn't adversely impact the project. If it comes after that date and it's going to impact our ability to do what we need to do. And then who's the responsible person in the team? Okay, there has to be a point person in the team that really rides bird dog on this, so that you're in a situation where you can have a point person that can report out on this on a weekly basis until it's removed. Okay. So constraint log should be managed actively, starts when you do your milestone plan, continues to be updated when you do your phase pull, and as you do your weekly updates on your 6-week make work ready plan. Okay, so as we look through here, we see teams use all kinds of different boards. It really doesn't matter whether, it's really what works for the team. We see people use swim lanes for geographic areas of work, or for trades, or for facades, or for elements of the work. You can do this any way that makes sense for you as a project. But the idea here is that you're planning for a full 6 weeks. And for each day of each of those weeks, you have a activity plan for each crew that is going to be on site, and it's visually posted on the board. The other point to note is that when you're putting tags on the board, whoever owns that activity should put their tag on the board, because if someone else moves it or does it on their behalf, it's not their commitment. Okay, so that's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay. For those of you that know Summer, my wife and business partner, there she is in the center. The guy just to the left of her is now in Qatar, running a very large lean program for the Qatari government. But this is the 6-week make work ready planning as they populated the boards, and really do all the tags have information that they should have on it, and if not, then go find the trade and ask them to do so. This is a project for the Veterans Administration up in Seattle. But you can see here they also have boards. They have swim lanes, which are really by geography and zone within each of the floor plates. As well as you can see that the way they kind of stack the trades is that if we look at the color of the tags, those are tied to each of the trades. Color is specific to a trade. That typically you're only having one trade in an area at a time, which really allows them to get very productive. But what they've done is they've made the area available to the trade smaller in order to really try and speed up the overall production of the job. So weekly work planning. So you've done this, done the milestone plan, you've done a phase poll, which informs your 6-week make work ready plan. And then what do you do as part of your weekly work? Okay, so this is your weekly meeting, whatever day of the week it is makes sense for the team. And you really want to talk through what's our Well, capture the metrics from the past weeks on your performance. How many commitments did you meet? And what commitments did you miss and the reasons why? And not getting into a lot of detail on the why, in an accusatory sense, but really just trying to capture data so you can really look for trends. Then what's our plan for next week? And really lock that down. It says that's how we're going to measure the reliability and predictability of our plan. And then the boards, if you can use these to inform your daily huddle, the teams that we see that can get the boards either out to where they hold their daily huddle or doing that virtually as necessary are very, very successful. Okay. There are some apps that are available. Post-it app from 3M, free on an iOS or a Droid device. You can basically take an image with your phone. It converts the tags into nice little tags on your phone, and you can make a PDF out of it. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so then I already made this point, but the weekly work plan really informs daily huddle. And so what should we be talking about at the daily huddle? Well, what did we do yesterday? What am I planning to do today? What didn't we get done yesterday, or what am I not going to be able to do today that I committed to, so that we can replan that work and people get that information in real time so that people aren't making assumptions and we're losing opportunities to react what's happening on the job site. Okay, so now we get the metrics. So we're really talking about the fifth part of the last planner system here, but really kind of tracking metrics. And this is actually kind of a busy chart. But the important thing to look at here is this orange chart or orange line that we see here. And that's tied to this axis over here, which is percent plan complete. And what that is that's a simply measure of the total number of activities that you completed when you said you were going to complete them, divided by the total number of activities planned. Pretty simple math. Okay, simple ratio. And if you hit 100%, that means you delivered all your commitments as a team. And you'll see here that they're fluctuating. Looks like from 81 to looks like they hit 100% once. But if we were to take an average of this, it's probably snapping in a line around here at about a mean of 90% percent plan complete on a weekly basis. That's pretty good. The other thing you want to look at is how deep are these peaks and valleys. We see some teams that, we had 100% this week, and the next week they're down at 50. That's unpredictable and unreliable, and that creates havoc in the job. So you really want to have kind of a narrow band, and the only way you're going to know how well you're doing is by tracking that and visually sharing it as a team. Okay. If you hit 100% every week, week after week, that means that you've got more buffer in your schedule than you probably need. I think I've shared this with Kevin before, but we went to a project at San Diego State maybe 5 years ago and took a tour for this particular contract. And PPC was on the wall and they were tracking it by trade, which is okay. But better really want to look at how the team overall is doing. But there were, I think, 4 trades that hit 100% every week over the course of the past 4 months. And so I had a sidebar conversation with the builder and said, well, you know what that means? And they said, well, no. I said, well, these foremen have figured out that they're going to be measured. And so they're putting buffer into their schedule so they can hit 100% every week. And you've probably lost the opportunity to really gain schedule if they gave you the realistic durations that were necessary for the job. So that led to some interesting conversations on the project. Okay, and then the other piece of the fifth part of the last planner system is how do we learn from this? So we talked about tracking your percent plan complete so you can look at the reliability and predictability of the plan. But the reasons for your missed commitments, by tracking that, you get to a point where you can really look at where are the areas that are causing problems for us on meeting those commitments we've committed to. In this case, this is just a sample from a project. Even if you don't use a Pareto chart, you can use bar charts, you can use pie charts, whatever works. But the Pareto chart really is kind of the 80-20 rule. And so the 80% of your problems are going to come from 20% of your of the issues, okay? So in this case, if we just look at this from a bar chart perspective, this labor deficiency here is responsible for the overwhelming majority of the missed commitments. And so there should be some deeper discussion on the team that, okay, we've got some with the amount of craft labor we have here on site. What's the issue? And why is that? And then ask enough whys, and some of you may have heard of 5 why, but really ask enough whys to get to why that is. And don't stop at the first one, because sometimes that's just a symptom. We've had jobs where the manpower, or say labor deficiency for the craft labor, is a function of ask why. Well, they didn't send any more from the home office. Well, why didn't they send any more from the home office? Well, we didn't ask. Or, well, we asked, but we didn't ask the right person. So you asked the right person. Okay, we're asking the right person. Yes, we asked the right person. Well, why didn't they send him? Well, we couldn't afford to send anybody more. Well, why couldn't you afford to send anyone? Well, we have a cash flow problem. Oh, okay. So now we understand what the problem is we're trying to deal with. And then maybe you look at ways that you can potentially help cash flow for that particular trade to get more resources on the job. So that's the type of way you can use this data, so you don't have Groundhog Day. But the idea is focus your time and energy on trying to solve these things that seem to be big headaches. And the kind of the noise in the background, don't worry about that so much. If you take care of these big things, good things will happen. And I think that takes us to where we're at. So I apologize, you ran just a couple minutes late because of the technical difficulties, but if people have questions, I will be glad to stay longer. People will want to ask those and walk through whatever issues people may have. But thank you so much for spending a good portion of your lunch with us today. And hopefully you took something away. For those that are more experienced, if you have some constructive feedback, please share. So thank you.
All right, Dave, and I've got one question that came in. Have you used this on a cost and resource loaded schedule? So I guess more generally is how would you work those two together?
Yeah, so the question is on the cost and resource loaded schedules. I have my own opinions about the value of those, but in general terms, what we're really trying to look for is production. And the cost and the resource piece of that, if you really wanted to look hard, you could translate your production plan with the crew sizes into a resource loaded. You could do cost if you really wanted to, but I'm not certain there's a lot of value in that. What we do see a lot of teams do is use their production plan to inform updates to a high level CPM schedule. So not CPM plan to the level I described, that's electrical trim out in room 901 on August 13th, 2021. But really looking at, we know we're going to be doing finished work on the top 3 floors in August of 2021, and then use the production planning from last planner to kind of update that at the appropriate level in the CPM. And there are a lot of virtual tools, digital platforms now that are more conversant on taking that production plan and interfacing with either P6 or with Microsoft Project or even location-based scheduling protocol.
All right, and our next question is, are you only expecting this in the construction phase? We utilize Last Planner in all phases, but this seems focused on construction. So there has been a big blur between what was traditionally design, bid, build construction, and now most of us as contractors also play a huge role in the design team. Yep. So we would think that it would start with project inception and use the collaborative planning process to plan the planning and the design. Because the most important thing that I would want to reiterate is this drives the communication. If everybody's communicating perfectly with using a bunch of tools, then it takes care of itself. But in most cases, that's not happening. And this is a tool to help facilitate communication through the entire life cycle process. So Dave, I don't know what else you want to tack on that.
Yeah, so the way that the specification is written is it can be used for any of the current construction contracts available, for everything from job order contract, design bid build, CM at risk, or your collaborative design build. So it's really written from a construction perspective for that reason. However, to Kevin's point, you can certainly use this for design and pre-construction. There are some nuances that we didn't talk about here that aren't captured in the specification. But milestone planning and the phase poll work well for design production. What doesn't work as well is the 6-week make work ready planning. That doesn't seem to work as well with design professionals. And so what we see work best is overlaying Scrum for development of sprints in lieu of doing the 6-week make work ready plan with the sprint duration of 2 weeks or 4 weeks, which tends to be more aligned with the way a lot of design teams practice. So I'll leave it at that. If someone's interested in a deeper dive, reach out and I'll be glad to share.
Guys, we got another question coming in from Josh Market's son. He says, do you believe there's a preferred PPC value that encourages subs to push themselves but prevent them from being unrealistic?
Yeah, so typically what we see, most teams that are performing well are somewhere between 80 and 90% on average in their percent plan complete. If teams are trending over 90%, then there's probably some buffer and some more challenge that you could put the team to. If they're below 70% or below 80% or below 70%, then there's a lot of instability and challenge with the reliability of the planning that probably requires a little bit of an intervention or a deeper dive. But we like to say 80 to 90%, we see teams in that range, they're typically doing pretty well.
All right. The next one is, can phase poll be done via Zoom during COVID? So I guess the more general discussion, and Dave, I'd be interested in your experience on that, is have you facilitated or been part of a virtual planning exercise?
The answer is yes to both of these questions. You have to, there are different approaches to this, but we've been successful in doing so, both participating and facilitating. But UCSD has done some of this where we facilitated. We've also done some work with airports remotely this way. There are a number of digital platforms which are available, and some of those are better than others. What we like to do, and we've done this both ways, is either using a digital whiteboard, something like Miro, and you can actually assign for those that are participating. If you set up the boards properly, you can actually assign rights for people to come and participate for the day and move their tags, and it becomes a very collaborative session. Alternatively, you can have somebody at a wall at the job site that is, either completing or moving tags on people's behalf. That's not quite as interactive as some of the digital platforms, but I think I would challenge any team that's thinking about this would be, well, rather than saying we can't do it, say, how could we do it? And then all of a sudden you're in a situation where you might be surprised with some of the ideas that come out of that.
And I think the key there is what's the best way to facilitate communication among the right stakeholders, which again, if you're thinking about last planner, that last planner is usually the foreman and the crew in the field. So if most of your offsite or most of your management is offsite and there's very few management staff that's with the crew, how can you tie them in together? Do you get a projection screen with a video so that you can interact with them? But just how do you ensure that communication is happening and it's happening with the right people on a consistent basis?
Yeah. So Kevin, I'll share that we've done some what I'll call hybrid solutions along those lines where at pharmaceutical plants, we're working with one team that's developing a COVID treatment, not the vaccine, but a treatment. Hopefully, they won't be needing that for too much longer. But they're trying to double their capacity, and so there are only so many people that can physically be present on site. But to your point, we set that up with high definition cameras, big screens, had those that needed to participate remotely available and watching what was going on at the walls, appropriate social distancing in effect. But I think there were only maybe 8 people in the room. So it was kind of the key trades, but everybody available as necessary to really participate remotely if need be. Okay.
All right, looks like our questions are slowing down and we're about 15 minutes after, which is about where we're planning. So again, I want to thank everybody that joined us and that's still on the call for taking your lunch hour plus some. And then thank you, Dave, for helping us through this whole process and for joining us today. And this will be available to at least CSU employees on our website as well afterwards. So we will have this on video. And then we're also planning on continuing to do more training in the future. So if you have a project that's getting ready to kick off and don't have many people on your project that have any physical experience doing pole planning, feel free to reach out to us and we can see if we can help coordinate the resources to at least get some in-person training, consulting, and kickoff sessions so that you can ensure that you get a good kickoff for your project to be successful.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Kevin, Jeremy.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Yep. Signing off.